In this screencast, we're going to learn to animate a character. We previously made a timer, and when I click the green flag, the timer continues until I press the space bar. Now we're going to create a new sprite, and we click here to create a new sprite, which appears on the screen in a different color from the first sprite. Note that each sprite has its own script area, so if I go to the timer sprite, it has its script. When I go to the new sprite, it doesn't have any scripts at all because it's a new sprite. So we're going to begin by adding some costumes. This is the costumes area, or the costumes tab. I'll go up to the file menu to import some costumes. And they'll appear here. I'm going to scroll down through the different possible costumes until I get to a costume that shows Avery walking. And so there are three phases of this process. This is the first one. Then Avery B walks a little further, and you can see the second one. I've imported the second one. And now C gives me a third phase. And so now that I've imported these three costumes, I can cancel the costumes dialog box. Now I can go to scripts, go to the looks menu, which is purple, and I'm going to use the next costume code block to allow Avery to walk. So if I click each time, then Avery walks. We're going to use a forever loop in much the same way we did the timer, and put the next costume in that after we add a wait statement. So at this stage, the basic script looks very much like the timer script, except that instead of advancing seconds in the timer, we're advancing costumes. And so let's take a look at what this looks like. So Avery is walking in place almost as though she were walking on a treadmill. Let me stop this, and at this stage, what I might like to do is go to the motion command and use the move command to allow Avery to walk across the screen. So at this point, we'll click, and Avery will walk across the screen, and in fact walk off the right side of the stage. If I want to bring Avery back, I can use the go to block, and that brings her back to the center of the screen. This is the center of the screen. The left side of the stage, I can use the X position block to tell me where Avery is. In fact, if I click X position, I can see where she is. And it turns out that the far left side of the screen is something like minus 240, and the right side of the screen is something like plus 240. So if I would like, I'm going to take off that watcher because it's a little distracting. So if I'd like to check to see when Avery is going off the edge of the screen, once again, I can use an if statement, just as I did with the timer. And I can say, if, let's go get a sensing, an operator's rather, block. And what I want to find out is if the X position is greater than 240, because that's the right side of 240 is the right side of the stage. And if that is the case, then I want to set the X position back to minus 240. So if I drop this in at the bottom of the screen, now Avery will walk off the edge of the screen and reappear. Finally, I'd like to add, I don't need these blocks anymore, so I'm going to delete them just by dragging them off the left side. And then I'm going to add a green flag at the top. If I add a green flag at the top, I can run the timer and Avery walking at the same time. So let's time and see how long it takes Avery to walk across the screen. So it took about 5 or 6 seconds for Avery to walk across the screen. We've now looked at all of the commands in the command palette except for the pin command. Essentially what the pin command does is allow a sprite as it moves to draw a line. And so a pin down command will cause the virtual pin, to lower, and then pin up causes it to raise. Clear will clear the screen. There are more in-detail description of these commands in the Turtle Graphics unit, which follows. So at this stage, we're once again going to save our program. And at this point, we've used at least one command in each of the categories. We've used motion commands, looks commands, sound commands, control commands, sensing commands, operators, and variables. This has been a tour of the different categories in the code block palette in Snap, and an overview of the way in which code blocks are snapped together to form scripts.